the state prison that houses the morning roll call massacre shooter, ex-police officer Daryl Spook Spokane, who was convicted of killing 4 of his fellow officers when he opened fire during a morning roll call inside the Metropolitan Police Station. Now, an hour before his execution, Spokane has agreed to give an uncensored interview to explain what led him to commit one of the most heinous mass shootings in American history.
I am a patriot who fought against these blue domestic terrorists who wreaked havoc on the world. Everywhere they went, they caused pain and loss. Everywhere they went, they hunted and tortured. I've seen them crush the already fragile spirit of the community, piss on the sacredness of the Constitution, and violate the rights of human beings. These despicable, repulsive miscreants deserve much worse than what I did to them. That was a blessing. Every person that puts on the badge and then violates the public trust should be charged with treason, dragged out into the middle of the streets where they patrolled, and beheaded. Spike their heads upon a stake in the middle of 1st and Main as a warning to all who violates the public trust. That is not anger. That is American.
Welcome back to My Harlem Portraits. This is the show that wants to shed a light on the incredible contribution of African Americans to the building of this country. I want to start this 2021 Black History Month of February with a very special guest today. Someone who has lived his life balancing constantly between two worlds, generally quite separate from each other, but both of the utmost importance in our particularly troubled and dangerous moment in history. The justice-injustice system that is dividing and tearing America apart right now, and the artists, the storytellers, and the creators who are constantly trying to find the common grounds on which to regenerate love and rebuild a more just and fair society for all human beings. This is where we are now. Welcome, Meshaun Labrone.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me. Really
I'm
do.
so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please tell what made you choose these two paths. You are a complete artist, in fact, an acclaimed SAG-AFTRA actor, playwright, writer, director, producer, and musicians, and you mentor lead acting workshops for college students.
Yes.
On the other hand, you are also, for 11 years, you have been a corrections officer, special deputy U.S. Marshal for the state of Florida, where you were born, and as well, a Metropolitan Police Officer in Washington, D.C., where you now reside. In this capacity, you also worked on the Relisha Rudd missing persons case. Tell me how you put together these two worlds.
That's an interesting question. I think that the way that I was able to put it all together was at the core of each one, it's service. Okay, and you being a public servant in the capacity of either in law enforcement or corrections or in certain federal security positions. You know, your service is to the public and definitely for the employees of that particular building. If it's federal security, such as the folks over at the Capitol Police, but that's another story. You know, I mean, your job is to help and assist and protect these folks and the public. As an artist, I think for me anyway, your job is also to assist, to help, to bring about certain truths in our lives and in reality, and make them a little clearer for people. Some things that they can never really express or really understand. It's your job as an artist to help pull those things out and bring it to their face and have them say, oh, that's exactly how I felt. That's exactly how I've been feeling my whole life when I hear that song, when I see that movie, see that play. And so I just look at, even though they're different areas as far as work, whatever that means, because I enjoy both. But that's at the core. It's to assess human beings and to assist human beings and to give them a certain level of protection from those fears that they may have. I remember something to the effect that Bill Duke said, something that I'm paraphrasing, that actors do what regular people go to the psychiatrist to forget, something of that nature. You know what I mean? So it's our job to kind of, we take on that hard task of being those fears that you kind of want to shun away from, and you can experience it without actually being there. You know what I mean? So we're there to help. We're the servants.
So that is what the being a policeman should be, and this is why you went into it. But we have seen in these times, and we will come back to that when we talk about your latest show, that this is not, unfortunately, the situation, and there has been a lot of problems due to the injustice done to Black and brown people by the police
Yes.
in specific. And I
Yes.
know that you suffered from that too.
Yes.
But I will pick it up later when we talk about your latest show, if it's okay for you.
Oh yes, absolutely.
I met you about 4 or 5 years ago
Yeah.
when we were at the National Black Theater Festival in
Right.
Salem, North Carolina. And I remember that I came to see your show, Power. I didn't know what it was about. And I was blown away by your interpretation. It's superb one-man show that you wrote. And it's about the life of Stokely Carmichael. And I remember asking you for an interview because to me it was, if not the best, one of the two best shows that I've seen at that festival.
Mm.
And I didn't know at the time who Stokely Carmichael was.
Wow. Okay.
So let's talk about that because this is an important show that you also brought to the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History.
Right. Yep.
Right? And you were you had the sold out show both in 2017 and 2018.
Yes.
That's something incredible. Let's talk a little bit about this amazing show.
Yes. Basically, Power Stokely Carmichael, what we did was we wanted to, one of the things I've noticed that a lot of times when people try to do biographical solo shows or even just regular films, they try to, in my opinion, a lot of times put too much in the film. They try to cover the person's entire life, and I think that that's a mistake, because it's hard to try to cover everything in a person's life. I think hitting key points is good. What I find to be even more interesting is to find a certain moment, a defining moment in that person's life, and to focus on that. And that's what we did with our play. So our play takes place in Mississippi during the whole March Against Fear that took place, where SLC, SNCC, CORE, and more importantly, Stokely Carmichael and Dr. King wanted to do this march from Tennessee into Mississippi, um, after Mr. Meredith was shot, and they want to go ahead and register African Americans to vote, and they wanted to go ahead and take on this march. Well, during that march, Stokely got arrested, and when he got out, that's when he did his famous Black Power speech, and also who was there with him, who encouraged him to do that, was Mr. Mukasa Willie Ricks, who encouraged him to say, hey, this is the time to use that phrase. So we wanted to kind of focus our play on that moment, when he's giving that speech, and on how that brought about this whole new wave and this whole new direction in the civil rights movement, and letting the people know that it was this man, Stokely Carmichael, that spearheaded this new movement that, folks like himself, this younger generation that was coming along, could attach themselves to, that it could be their movement now. You know what I mean? And we did that play, and I tell you, it really sparked so much interest, like you just stated, for people who did not even know. Before even doing the play, I went around just asking people if they knew who Stokely Carmichael was. And I was amazed by how many people, Black and white, who did not even know who the man was, let alone if
Amazing to me that people in this country, and especially Black people, didn't know. Tell
yeah.
the viewers a little bit about his life so that they understand who this man is.
He's a Trinidadian American, but he was there in New York. He grew up in New York. He attended Howard University, and which a lot of people did not know. And he was just a brilliant student, and he could have easily just stayed right there, got his doctorate degree, and taught somewhere. You know what I mean? And he didn't. He wanted to be a part of the movement. He saw what was going on. He hated the injustices. As a young student, he was part of the young students coming down and getting on the buses and testing out whether it was free for them to go and travel as they please. And of course, a lot of his friends, associates got beaten up, and the freedom bus rides got beaten up and thrown in jail, him included. I forgot how many times brother, he had changed his name to Kwame Ture, had gotten arrested. I think he said almost like 40 or 50 or 60 times. You know what I mean? But he eventually became the president of SNCC. His predecessor was John Lewis, and he became the president. And when he became the president, SNCC became a lot more radical. You know what I mean? And saying, look, we love Dr. King and we applaud his efforts, but being a part of this whole non-violent and not hitting you back when you strike me, he was completely against that.
It sounds a little bit like he is embracing the philosophy of Malcolm X in this case.
Yes, Stokely was a follower of Malcolm X. He believed that what Malcolm was talking about was a lot more practical. It made more sense. It was more in sync with reality, rather than just, you going somewhere and letting somebody beat on you, and by them beating on you, that's going to change them and make them realize that what they're doing is wrong. But like he said, in order for nonviolence to work, your opponent has to have a conscience. America has none. America has none. And we've been seeing from the time he made that comment all the way up to yesterday or today, we see that America does not have a conscience. And, it's right there. It's not like you have to even come up with an argument for that.
As a non-American, sometimes I feel like I'm in a surreal movie. I cannot believe that the cradle of democracy, as America has always tried to portray itself, can accept that people storm the Capitol, that someone inside the political system and the government system is connected to this disruptor, to this insurrectionist, and still the Senate or the Republicans don't do nothing about it.
Yes.
And I say, don't do nothing in a double negative.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
It's like, wait a second, what is going on?
Hmm. What's going on is what Black people have been looking at and watching from the time that we've come in contact with the American government and the American white man. That's why most of us are not shocked. Some of us that try to act like we're shocked, and it's like, come on, I'm not shocked whatsoever. This is what goes down. This is what happens. This is the injustice that you see. This is you say one thing out of the side of your mouth, and then you do something else and say
Yeah.
something totally different on the other side of your mouth. So if these people that stormed that Capitol were BLM or Black Lives Matter protesters, then you would have seen bodies all over the place. There would have been
They wouldn't have got in.
it would have been hundreds of thousands of arrests, but here and I'll say this, and I'm not going to say too much. I'm telling you, I've talked to some of those Capitol Police officers, and they themselves, some of them were saying it either had to be an inside thing, or what they've said, they don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Because you turn around and you're just seeing these people just walking around as if they're on some type of field trip, going wherever they want, and there was no instructions on what you should really be doing. And consequently, here it is, you had one officer die, and I think two other officers that committed suicide, one of which was an MPD officer that I worked with.
Oh my God.
I've worked with that gentleman. He was always a
You
very
knew him.
fun-loving guy, always laughing, whatever. And man, now the man is dead. And he was
Are
one of
we
the
sure they are suicides?
they were trying to hide that with him, and I don't know why they were trying to hide it, but then of course the media released it, and the chief confirmed it that it was a suicide. So one of the things a lot of the veterans are thinking, that this was such an overwhelming experience for them, that for a lot of these officers, a fear of losing their life, having that kind of trauma. Some of these folks are not used to that, or it could be very traumatizing for a person, and you don't know how a person is going to react after having an experience.
Yeah, this is really
So
it's really incredible. It's disheartening, and we go back to the fact that you've been a policeman, an enforcement agent for many years, and so you lived this life from within. And I know that you had problems in your private life because of choices you made.
yes.
So let's talk about that, if you want, by bringing in your latest effort, which is the filming of your exceptional play entitled Spook, for which you also curated the soundtrack. And we saw an extract of that film in the beginning of the show.
Yes.
It's powerful, it's very, very current, it's deeply introspective, it's analytical and dissacrating at the same time. This is what I wrote to you when you sent me the movie to see.
Yes.
I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. And what is incredible is that I knew what to expect because I had seen your play.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's not that I didn't know what I was gonna see, but I think that the way you filmed it, it's really amazing. So let's talk about this, both the play and the movie that you are shopping at the time as we speak. All right. So tell me, how were you inspired by this? What brought you to write about this, and so on?
Well, one of the things that inspired me the most, definitely, of course, my experience working as a police officer. And I was a police officer here in DC for about 3 years. And I tell you, it's one of the best jobs that I've ever had, and one of the best cities. I just fell in love with DC when I moved here from Miami. I just fell in love with. I fell in love with the DC culture. I fell in love with the people, everything about it. And I said to myself, man, it would be great to be able to create my art here, and at the same time do something else that I love,
Mhm.
which is being in law enforcement and being a public servant. And I'll say that more so, a public servant.
Yeah.
That's, I come from a family of public servants. Father is a pastor. He worked as a community organizer and a chaplain. My mother worked as a teacher for Head Start. That's a daycare for children and families who don't have the money to spend on daycare. You know what I mean? And so I come from that. So to be a public servant here in DC was something that I just was like, wow, that would be great. And then when I was able to get in it, oh man, I just absolutely loved it. I became the class leader for the academy. During the Relisha Rudd case with a missing girl, I had the privilege of being able to work as a scribe with the Metropolitan Police Department and the FBI, and lead my class in looking for the little girl. Now, we weren't able to find the little girl, but we did find the gentleman that kidnapped her, and
Okay.
he was found dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And it was my recruits, not the officers of the FBI. It was the recruits that found that
They
gentleman.
found it. Wow, that is incredible.
No one, and I even went on Wikipedia. They don't even show that at all. They'll say Metropolitan Police, but it was our recruits. I love the job, and I love the guys. And but while I was there, that's when I started to come in contact with behavior that I did not find uh, professional. I'll
Mhm.
say I'll say it that way. There were a couple of times where I was with certain officers
Mhm.
where it's like you already have your suspect. He's in handcuffs, no problem. He's calm, and then here comes somebody, and they're trying to rile the suspect up. For what reason? Just so he could put his hands on somebody. And I've had to stop them from doing that, from
No.
antagonizing. There have been certain cases where I've been on a scene, and thank God I was there, because if not, somebody who was in handcuffs, who was underage, who was just hanging with some older kids that were doing the wrong thing, would have, right to this day, would have had a felony record. And I
Mm.
had to go in there and argue the case with the facts, where even the attorneys were like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure. See my notes." And it is
This
up
is
to
what they call de-escalating
you.
instead of
Well,
escalating, right?
well, it's also about being just
Mm-hmm.
and seeking justice and what's right. Police officers have a lot of power.
Yep.
You can go in there with that attorney, and if it's a case, you can go in there with a compelling and convincing story to get that person convicted and to get them to pursue that case. Or you can go in there and say, no, he was just messing around. He was all right. He didn't give us any problems. I don't think we should pursue this. I don't think we should paper this case. And that attorney will listen to you and say, well, you don't think we should? All right, let him go.
This is
You
crazy.
have that
The thing
power
is that they have the life of people in their
in
hands.
their hands.
This is crazy.
In their hands. So you want to know why? It's like, wait a minute, black and white people use drugs at the same rate. Why is it all these black folks are going to jail? I've been on a call where a woman had 4 bundles of heroin.
Oh,
Her mother called. We going to this beautiful home in DC. The woman's child is running rampant around the house. She's clearly
mm.
not in the best position
Yeah.
to have this child to nothing. The mother called. The officer I was with, who was a veteran who was training me, said, listen, you want to go to jail or the hospital? You want to go to jail or the hospital? I was saying to myself, he's giving her an option. If she was brown, it would have been handcuffs. Let's confiscate this. Let's get the, and you gone. Let's call Child Family Services, or she can stay with the grandmother and you're gone.
Yeah.
We sat there for 15, 20 minutes for her to make up her mind whether she wanted to go
Oh my God.
or the hospital. So I was like, this is weird. But the death blow came during some of my training where I was dealing with a Black officer. And he just made my whole time just horrific. Just
Wow.
horrific. Doing the hazing and doing the picking and doing the, and no respect of me as a person and someone who was a bit older than him, which really ticked me off.
What does doing the haze mean?
Hazing is almost kind of like it's almost like a, so police department is like a fraternity.
Yes.
But they'll say it's the biggest gang, which is understandable. Everybody knows that when you get in, that you're gonna get some, we gotta see if you're good, which is awesome. I understand what that means. Being an idealist, I'm thinking, they want to see your work ethic. Are you able to handle yourself out there? Because you're gonna get in some situations where it's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Never mind the paperwork. You'll get the paperwork, but can you handle yourself out there? Meaning, if it gets physical, can you handle yourself? And we saw with the Capitol Police, a lot of them were not able to handle themselves.
That's right.
They were just in a state of shock because they couldn't believe it. But I understand that when it comes to that profession. But this particular person, he was just doing the most, and it was very humiliating. And I was like, you know what? This is not working between the two of us. And I would go to superiors and supervisors and say, I think I need to switch. They would not switch. One of them even,
Why not?
because they said so. See, and that's another thing. And it was one of those things, and I'll say this, it was a thing, and I put it into play. It was a thing of, look, he is our perfect watchdog. He's our best Negro, and we are not gonna take you away from our best Negro. And I'm gonna say that. And on top of the fact that he was, oh God, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is something that goes on in our community, Pan-African community. He was a brother who was not Black American, and he had those tendencies of looking at those of us that were Black American as lazy or whatever, or not going along with his type of thing. He had a little bit of a clique of other young officers around him that looked up to him almost as if he were a god. And of course, with the other white supervisors, oh, he was their best. And I said to one of the supervisors one time, I said, it's amazing how I was with the other two veteran guys that had 25 plus years, and they were like, I'm ready to go. And then I get with this young guy who is not Black American, but there's a problem. I deal with the logic. I follow logic. I said, that doesn't make sense. This is my final phase. I know what I'm doing out here. These other guys have signed off and said, I know what I'm doing. They're Black American. We're around the same age. And now I'm over here and it's a problem. Why don't you put me with another veteran? If you think I'm not good, that got 20 years, he'll be able to know, no. Get out there. I need to know if you can handle it. Get out there. This type of talking. Now, we're grown men. I'm not going to let you talk to me like that, but they are all clicked in. When you're not part of that mold, if you're not part of that, like Serpico talked about, like so many other officers have talked about, if you're not in line with that, you are deemed as a problem, and with me talking about certain things, they didn't like that. And me giving this guy a hard time, they didn't like that. And then unfortunately, I ended up having to leave because I had a very serious family hardship. I need to take care of home. And they always told you that's priority.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I just need a different shift in schedule. Nothing. I argued that thing all the way up to the assistant chief. And they told that lady, looked me in my face and said, no. I'm like, you won't let me switch temporarily? I went to the detective's office. Y'all let me go up there and work with the detectives on cases for 60 days. You can't do this for me for 60 days? A change in schedule,
Yes.
not to stay home. So with all of that, my first partner put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. He survived.
Oh my God.
And that was one of the things where I was like, you know what? Let me start writing. Let me start writing. And that's when I came up with this idea of Spook.
Wow.
And what happens to an officer who is constantly being pushed to the limit, the constant stress, not from so much the streets, but from within.
Yeah.
And this person that pulled the trigger on himself, he was having issues within the department, but more so outside with his family. There was another officer who wanted to kill his supervisor, and he was talked down by a veteran officer during checkoff. He was going to walk up to the sergeant or the lieutenant and kill them as they were checking off. And the officer said, man, think of your children, man, think of your children. He paused for a minute and said, you know what? I can do the time. He was going to kill his lieutenant in front of everybody. So I said, you know what? Wait a minute. Let me
This
start.
is real stories.
This is real. These are real stories, I'm telling you. This is not, this is not fake. This is real stories. So I said, let me write these things down. And I began to write down ideas. And I tell you, the thing just started taking on a life of its own. And that's when we started hearing about shootings. The former officer Dorner out in California, where he was shooting, killing family members of police officers. And then down in Fort Hood, Texas, where the psychologist, the Army psychologist, I think he was a major or a captain, I believe, down in Fort Hood, he ended up becoming an active shooter. And I'm like, oh my God, look at all these things that are happening. And I said, you know what, let me write something. Let me write a play that touches on this experience and what is happening, not just to those of us that are victims of police brutality, but those of us that are working in that system, that are also being traumatized and being abused and coming face to face with verbal violence, emotional violence, and also, of course, with the physical violence.
This is what you're saying is incredible. I mean, I've heard a lot of things from friends who are police officers and who are telling me terrible recounts of what has been going on. A friend of mine is part of, I think it's 10 police officers who really started the movement to turn in their superior who were really profiling and pushing them to profile and all this. And they made a movie out of it. And in this moment, I don't remember the title, but I've heard these things before. But every time that I hear it, it's like reinstate why our situation in the States with killing of Black and brown people by policemen is so exacerbated.
Yes.
And it's out of hand. And I mean, we had George Floyd that has provoked a revolution around the world.
Yes.
About this, because for the first time, first of all, people were home. So they were watching it.
Yes.
They were seeing it.
Yes.
They had the time to realize what was going on, absorb it, exactly. So that was, I think, the factor that made it go so big, become so big, because people were paying attention and they saw it. They saw a murder.
Yeah.
in front of the camera.
Yep, absolutely.
And the fact that it is still happening,
Yes,
the fact that that wasn't the last one,
right. And it won't be.
and we are, what, 6 months after that?
Mhm,
And it's still happening, it's still going on.
mhm.
What is what? Why?
Well,
What
it's
is
it's
what you think?
it's man, I tell you, because it's as they say, it's deeper than rap. So it's a mixture of a lot of things. It's so deep. It's a mixture of a history of policing, policing black bodies, of slave patrols,
Mhm.
right? So and we can't get away from that origin. And thankfully, at least here in DC, they're actually teaching that history. They're teaching the origin of policing, going back to slave patrols. And I believe his name is Dr. Brunzik.
Mhm.
And I'll give you that his name again. Brilliant. He knew Stokely Carmichael, white gentleman. He was in SNCC. He showed me what the SNCC office originally was there on U Street.
What is Nick?
SNCC was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which
Okay.
was Stokely Carmichael was the president of. Um, and he was charged with teaching the entire department,
Mhm.
police department, about the origin of policing, particularly against the African American community,
Mhm.
so that the people will understand where's this, all this, disdain and this idea of you can't trust the police. Where's that coming from? Well, this is the origin. So these officers will be supplied with that information and be able to apply that to their job when they're interacting with the public, regardless if they're white, but definitely if they're black. You know what I mean? So while that is going on, and they're training and having to practice that, and contrary to popular belief, let me tell you something. Police officers right now are under serious scrutiny right now. You can't. I'm talking to friends of mine now that are still on the department that are black. You had better not say anything almost, or else you will be brought up on policy violation or even criminal charges. And
But what do you mean by that? You can't say anything in what way?
meaning you can't even, like, if I'm dealing with a criminal, I underline that, criminal, and I'm like, hey, get over here, stop that, damn it, or whatever. If you say that, you could literally be brought standing tall before the man. He's like, why? What did I say? Well, you cursed at him.
But this is crazy. But so how come that they're still killing people? This is really
Right,
confusing.
right. So what's happening is it's almost. I remember there was a line in I think it was in Platoon where it says, just like you're trying to cure the headache by cutting off the head.
Hmm.
And I'm saying that to say those that are criminals, again, I must emphasize criminals and police officers. Do you know that's a subculture that has an understanding and a language between each other.
Wow.
There is a language and there is an understanding between the criminal and the police officer where, sir, yes, sir, it doesn't make sense to the criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something a lot of people try to avoid, that nobody really wants to talk about this. For instance, let's take, for instance, up in Baltimore, and I don't know if it's changed. But they took away the undercover units.
Yeah.
The criminals are like, awesome, because now they can operate. They don't have to
And why
worry
did
about,
they do that?
because they were saying that something to the effect that it wasn't fair, that was unconstitutional. It wasn't good to have these officers running around, not identifying themselves, that it was violating certain rights. Now, this is what I've been, and I also heard that they took it away from Metro Transit Police here in DC as well, saying it wasn't good, it was not good for the community. Well, you take that away, now you have open drug markets.
Yep.
Now I don't have to worry about the person that's buying from me that I may not have seen before being undercover. You know what I mean? Also, the community was saying, you arrest this the person that's selling. Okay, you're undercover, but he's just a small time dealer.
Yeah.
But you don't know that by talking to him and interrogating him properly, not beating him up now, but properly, it could lead to the person that's supplying, because he's only a pawn that's being used. And these things, these are tools that used properly could bring down and have in the past brought down those that are poisoning the community. Using strong language in highly stressful physical altercations. Some people are like, and what I'm telling you is true. They have gone and said, hey, he cursed at me. They've gone to court and said that, or if not in court, have reported this.
Yes.
Even though that the person was in the wrong. I'm not, and I must emphasize, I'm not talking about innocent people, like how I was an innocent kid and being slammed on the car and had my book bag opened up and dumped out because they thought I'd stolen somebody's chain. And I'm listening to them on the radio saying the person had on a mask. And I'm like, I don't have no mask on. And this ain't them. And throwing my bag down and throwing my cousin all on top of their hood. I'm not talking about that. That's complete police brutality and inappropriate behavior. But I'm talking about with criminals. Okay. And now people are saying, hey, all these shootings have gone through the roof in these metropolitan communities. Well, the officers are like, look, I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to lose my college money for my kids. So they're doing something that I don't condone, but they're sitting back. They're not patrolling. They're not getting out of their cars, walking around, getting to know the community like they should. Because some of them actually, when they're walking through, they're getting harassed. They're being called all kind of names. They're saying F12, you know. But so they're just like, you know what?
So there is what you're saying, in fact, is that there is a exacerbation in both sides.
Yes, there is. There is.
Because on one side, people are still being killed by police.
Yes.
And on the other side, you're telling me policemen are put like in a cage?
Yes. Where they can't.
So how do you coincide these two things?
This is how you coincide it. You have to start first with as the police officer now. I'm just talking about the police officer. I'll get to the public later. As a police officer, you have to go in there with a heart to serve the people. You know that you're not going to be loved. You know that the people are not going to want to deal with you. You know that when you get that call, you're dealing with that person on the worst day of their life.
Yeah.
Because they had to call the police. So you need to mentally be prepared and ready for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Me, I won't say I'm the exception to the rule, but I'm a Muslim. So I came into the profession with that faith, and I became a Muslim under the Nation of Islam. So the first thing in mind is your people.
Yes.
Your people have been brutalized. Your people have been harassed. Your people have been killed. Your people were in the institution of slavery. Your people need a savior.
Yes.
Someone in that capacity, someone in that seat to kind of be a savior for them. And being a servant or a savior, as you know, if you read any religious book, is not really celebrated until after he's dead. So you have to understand that it's going to be a narrow road that you're going to be on, right? So you have to have that mindset. You can't get in that job just saying, well, no, I know I'm gonna make a lot of money. I'm gonna get me a pension. I want to be a captain. No, no, no. That's the wrong mind to be in. I could never understand why those that have never been in contact with Black people all the days of their life would ever want to be a police officer in Philadelphia, DC, and Chicago. I could never understand that. The only time you saw Black people was on television. Now, I had that in my class. There was a gentleman that was in our class that had never interacted with African American people ever.
My God.
So when they're talking loud and raising their hands and be like, man, he's thinking that they're going to attack him.
Yeah.
Not knowing that they're just expressing themselves. And let the man talk.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have that
Is,
mindset. Yeah. So for instance, the gentleman that got shot in the back, okay, and he's going to his car, and the officer pulls his gun. I guess in his mind, he thought at any point the guy was going to turn into the hawk and eat him or something. No, if he's out of control, he's not listening, then that's when you put your hands on him. Now, somebody would say, well, if you put your hands on him, then they're going to say, it's better that they say that than you taking a gun and putting 7 bullets in his back.
Yeah. That was terrible too. I mean,
you know,
I'm tired of hearing these things.
No, absolutely.
What made the beginning of this pandemic the worst for me was when Eric Floyd happened. When that murder happened, everything became absolutely crazy for me, because now we are really hitting the bottom, and we are seeing it on TV. We are seeing in front of us. Everybody's seeing that. So that, and then you have time to think about evil and how can people behave like that and hate human beings, other human beings in that way, to not even listen to someone who's asking, please, I can't breathe, you know?
Right.
I mean, this has turned that all that these horrible times that we have into something even worse, even unacceptable, and we need to do something. We need to do something.
Yeah, it's the complete disdain and hatred for the Black body. I mean, and we have to come to terms with that in this country, because
and 74 millions voted for a guy who is a total nutcase. He's crazy. I mean, he's a dictator. 74 million. So it means there is a lot of work to do in this country.
Absolutely. And I keep telling people that, you know, people like, well, you know, Trump. I say, well, look, you have to understand now, Trump is gone. You still have 74 million people that voted, not counting how many other millions who didn't vote, but believe in what he was doing or believe in the idea of white supremacy. And white supremacy is alive and well in this country. And it will be alive and well in this country for a long, long time.
You feel it. It's really something that is impermeating the everyday's life now, and we need to do something about it, and we need to make sure that this new administration doesn't let the GOP and the part of the GOP which is totally in the pockets of Trump dominate. That's that. We can't listen to them anymore. This is crazy.
Well, absolutely, and I hope that the new administration also will do their part of really, um, how can I put it, upholding their promise to fixing the problem within the Black community. Okay, you know, because at the end of the day, what took place in Georgia and around this country with Stacey Abrams in Georgia, and that, Black people helped this man get in office.
Absolutely.
So you know
Absolutely.
he better
Stacey
not sit
Abrams,
there.
she's a hero to me.
You
She
know,
turned
really,
Georgia blue.
yeah, you know, she single-handedly
Yeah.
did that. So, you know, I appreciate him saying, you know, when his acceptance speech, he said the African American community helped us. Da, da, da. That's great. That's wonderful. But you got to do more than that. You
Mm.
know, you got to do more than that. And the idea of reparations needs to be something need to be seriously considered and doled out. A lot of people don't want to hear that either. But that's what you need to do. That's what he needs to do. No more talking. They've been talking about that, Lord, for as long as I've been alive, talking about reparations. You know what I mean? And they have all of the proof right there that, you know, what was supposed to be given and was, you know, basically they reneged on the whole contract. Well, be a person or a man or a government of your word. That's the only thing Black people have ever asked for. Black people have never asked for just charity or just give me something for nothing. They've never asked for that. They've asked for, hey,
What
give
was
us
due to them?
to us. That's all we asking for. Yeah, yeah, you do this, you do that, you do this, putting a band-aid here, putting a band-aid there, and then flood the community with all of these drugs, which has completely broken down the families in all of these major cities and all over the country. And this is why, you know, folks drive by the hood and say, man, these folks are crazy. Yeah, you're right. These people are freaking crazy. Look at what has happened to the people, you know, and yet there still has not been a true healing that I think the government can definitely help out with that. But also within us, there needs to be self-examination and accountability and responsibility to be able to heal oneself as well. You know what I mean? And we need to do that too. And there needs to be more of that. But that's where my movie, my play originally, and now the film Spook, as you saw,
Yeah.
touches on all of that. I touch on all of that. This world,
It's
that this very
your
idea.
experience, your life experience that went into that. This was the base. That's why you wrote this piece, The Spook.
Yes.
Tell me what it is, but tell our viewer what it is about in specific.
Okay, basically, Spook is about former police officer and now death row inmate Daryl Spook Spokane, who is on death row, and he has 1 hour before his execution. And before he's executed, he agreed to a live television interview on talking about what made him, you know, commit such a heinous act of killing 4 of his fellow officers in what would be considered the roll call massacre and bludgeoning to death one of his former partners, Kawhi Alicia Johnson, in her home.
Wow.
And he talks about what took place, what led him to that, his upbringing, also in hopes that possibly he could get a stay of execution by the government, well, not by the government, but by the governor, because this defense attorney, his defense team, states that what he did was his, in his mind, his patriotic duty, because these 4 or 5 officers were basically against the public trust, violated the public trust, and he called them blue domestic terrorists.
Wow.
Felt like it was his job as a patriot to defend the public against these blue domestic terrorists.
So, and the play is about that hour or so in which he is telling his story and he's
Yes.
telling why
Yes.
this happened.
Absolutely.
Which state of mind are you in when you play this? This is
Very
pretty
interesting.
amazing.
Very interesting. Somebody else asked me something to that effect. The state of mind I'm in at that point is I'm the character and realizing and knowing and, believe it or not, at peace with the idea that my time is limited and
Mhm.
that there's nothing here to stop me for telling the truth. Because within an hour, I won't be here anymore. I won't be on this plane and have to deal with all of this ugliness and unhappiness and torture. I started thinking about that character, and I said to myself, wow, this guy is being tortured. He is being tortured and almost kind of being held captive in a way
Yeah.
by being in that uniform, by, dare I say this, controversial, being in the black skin. Because being in the black skin and being in this uniform, it's like he's in a prison inside of a prison. Because as a black person, the world, because of the white supremacists, has made the world a prison where you can't really reach the highest heights that you really want as a collective, as a whole. I don't talk to me about no Oprah Winfrey. I hate when people do that. Well, this person did, and this person did. Stop. We're talking about as a whole,
Yeah. The
as a
general.
as a group of people on the planet. Everywhere we go, you see the whole idea of color, of race, being something that kind of limits you,
Mm.
you know. And when it comes to Spook, when he's telling these stories and I'm looking at the film, and when I think about what I'm going through, it's that. It is just him just making his final confession of what it means to be in this world such as this. And he really believed, he thought that if he were a police officer, a
Mhm.
public servant, that things would change. Things would be different for me. And it wasn't. And I think there's a lot of us may end up working within the system.
Mm.
You may become a governor, you may become an AG, you may become a mayor, you may become a big time attorney or whatever big time job. Well, it's going to be different from me now. But you hear time and time again, yeah, they pulled me out my Mercedes. They slammed me on the ground. They thought I was breaking in my own house.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And had me lay down on the ground. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter about your
They
title
killed
or
me in my bed.
yeah, exactly. They killed me while I was sleeping in my own house.
No,
You
it's
know,
crazy.
it doesn't matter. You know, that's what's going through my mind. His confession
Wow.
of his trials and his
It
tribulations.
is an amazing, amazing movie. So let's see about you are shopping it around now, right?
Yes, yes,
And you said that it's gonna go to some festivals. So let's talk about this a little bit and
yes,
give people the idea of if someone wants to contact you about this, where to
yes.
contact you.
Okay, absolutely. First of all, we have a few companies right now looking at it. Am I at liberty to say? I'll mention one. One of them definitely was BET.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually taking a look at it, and some folks over at Netflix are
Okay.
taking a look at it. As far as the festivals are concerned, man, we sent that film to a good number of the festivals. One of them being the Cannes Film Festival in France, and we're really excited about that, and we feel very
And
confident
they
that it.
accepted it. So it's going to
Um,
show at the festival.
from what I'm hearing,
Mm-hmm.
it's a good chance.
Good
I don't want to
chance.
say
Mm-hmm.
absolutely yes, you know what I mean. But thankfully with these guys here, Flying Scoop, they have the inside track to different things, and right now, the folks that have screened it, everybody is loving it.
Yeah.
Some are very afraid of it. I'll say that also.
I totally
They're very
understand
afraid.
that. I
Yes.
totally understand that because that is a real movie. It's not a movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that some of the companies, some of the festivals, look, just reading what the movie is about
Mm-hmm.
has scared the bejesus out of some companies,
Let's not
which
say who they are.
I knew that that was going to happen,
Yes.
uh, and it has made people move very slow on
Mm,
what they want to tell us. So that's why it's kind of difficult for me to even say yes, yes, yes. I just keep telling everybody,
yes.
look, we're still looking for the distribution. We're talking to all of our contacts. If other people have folks that they, would want us to send it to, they can email me,
So where can they
Mich-
contact you?
they can contact me at Meshaun, Meshaun, Labrone, Labrone 73 at gmail.com. They
Perfect.
can contact me there, send me a shout out, send me an email. If know somebody that may want us to, send them the film for distribution or whatnot, hey, email me. You know what I mean? And I'll read it and send it to my partners, and we can move on from there.
Perfect.
One thing we know, we are so confident that we have a great, great film that I know the public will just go wild when they see it.
It is an amazing, amazing, amazing movie. And hard, but you got to see it.
Yes.
That's all I have to say. You got to see it. I watched it twice because I need
Wow.
to go back. Yes, it was, I
Wow.
needed to.
Wow. And this is somebody that saw the original play.
Yes,
Wow.
exactly. And it's powerful. It is something that needs to be seen, especially in the moment we are in now.
Absolutely.
It's so current. It's so what we're talking about today that it has to be seen. So I wish you the best for this and for
Thank,
everything you're doing.
thank
I
you so much.
thank you for being on our show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Come back anytime you want, and continue with that because everything you write and everything you play in is just wonderful
Thank you so much.
and current and very important. So that's it. And thank you to our viewers and see you next Saturday at My Harlem Portrait. Bye-bye.